I would call that a a trial balloon.
Trial
A
balloon.
trial balloon is where they try to institute a policy by suggesting it, and then try to
Right.
find out how many people agree or disagree with it,
Oh, okay.
in order to give a statistical probability of whether or not they can enact it later.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
what we heard was that the WHO should be given total control over
Right.
the health
That's
policies of
that's
individual
right.
countries in the
That's right.
case of an epidemic. And of
Right.
course, the epidemic is not going to be defined, is it? It's
That's
not. It's
right.
not going to be, defined as something like a death rate or as a
That's right.
hot or as anything. Or it's going to be a chimera that you
Sure.
can never
Sure.
pin down. But
That's
the
right.
point here is not the facts. The point here is the
Mm.
control. And
It is
and
all about control.
yes, and this concept that countries, in the case of an international epidemic, which of course could
Right.
be, if there was such a thing, could be controlled easily with airplanes and passports,
That's
right?
right.
But no, the World Health Organization has to be given that. And now, and if you did that, then they would have the ability to order their jurisdictions, such as your province, your city, your country,
That's right.
to
That's right.
to do anything that they felt like. For example, everybody
Yep.
has to line up for some kind of medical procedure
That's
in order
right.
to have a job or to have a livelihood, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
not a lot different from forcing Jews to wear the Star of David
Hmm.
in Nazi Germany.
That's right.
It's
So
total
I think
control.
this past June's situation didn't work out for the
You know
WHO.
why?
If I
Because they did
why?
that trial balloon and they found massive resistance. They
Right.
found massive pushback
Right.
in their polling. And remember, they do
Right.
polling secretly, and they don't tell us.
Of course.
And they put things like, for example, the way they do polling is they'll put articles suggesting such solutions like WH control over
Right.
everybody's local health organizations, and then they'll count the clicks, they'll
Right.
count the screen views. You see, they thought that the internet was going to be their way of controlling us and getting directly into our minds.
Right.
Well, it's not working out so good because our
No.
minds are telling them to F off. Okay? And
So
then they have
true.
to back down, and they can't
That's
do
right.
it. And it's especially
That's right.
embarrassing when you have the head of the United Nations itself is a
Right.
convicted terrorist
Oh yeah.
who's
Oh
done
yeah.
crimes against humanity as a
Of
leader of
course.
a actual
Yeah.
terrorist organization in I think it was in Africa. I can't remember the country right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the point is here is you have a terrorist organization
Sure.
terrorizing everybody with their health orders and the health regulations. And you know
That's
what?
right.
If there's not if there's not an epidemic right now, they'll make one.
Of course.
Yeah, we saw what they
They just
tried to
want
do.
to constantly keep you under their situation
Yeah,
and subsequently under their control.
yeah. And
That's
now
what
they found that
they've been
the
doing
yeah
all these time.
now.
That's why they're so
Mhm,
unwilling to let the narratives go.
mhm.
Yeah, they're still holding on to that narratives over and over again.
And,
They
and
keep
they're trying to do window
inventing
dressing.
new scares.
They're trying to do
Okay.
window dressing. They found out that monkeypox was ineffective because of the name.
Yes.
So now they changed the name to something else. They changed it
I
to one
told
of
my
these.
like-minded friend yet.
Yep, one of these medical
They
mumbo jumbo
okay.
names like HV
They
in
they
other words,
are
yep,
very they have become very desperate because
yep,
we are the general public. Okay, I mean,
uh huh.
criticize me. Feel free to criticize or counter what I said
No,
because
we're
I welcome
hold for it.
healthy criticisms. Okay, because
Yes,
I need to. That's how I can open up my mind and learn and try to look at it from
it's
different
called
perspectives.
discourse. It's called
Right.
discourse. That's right.
Right. So anyway, so I told her the reason why it became so crazy these days is because the Weffers and the cabal has become extremely desperate.
That's right.
We are no longer falling for the okay. We are sick and tired of the original narratives after 2.5 years of stupid lockdowns and things
Yes,
like that. Although there's still a lot of delusional people falling
yes,
for the narratives. Fact of the matter is, the rest of them start to have doubts Even
Yes.
the ones who took 1 jabs and 2 jabs and managed to survive with minimal damage, they start to wake up
It's heartbreaking.
somewhat,
It's heartbreaking.
but they're not falling for the so-called bivalent bullshit, the 5th jab for a Slappy Joe with the scene where the nurse still has the blue protective plastic cap on the needles. Come on now, that's becoming
It
ridiculous. But
is.
it also goes to show how desperate they become.
And the
Okay?
true
If we're
believers,
look at
the
we're-
true
if we're
believers.
look at
Yep. Give me a second.
if we're to yeah okay
The true believers are fading away.
That's right.
In my neighborhood, I've got some elderly residents.
that's right. That's
They're
right.
they're still wearing a face mask protection
That's right.
device, which does nothing but recirculate your own germs. Okay,
That's right.
because you're
That will
expelling
get them.
your
That will
germs
easily
and
get them
using
sick during
backhand.
this season.
Well, there some of these ladies and gentlemen are in their 70s and 80s, and we see obituaries on the community poster board,
That's right.
and they seem to be expiring. And I can see them
Right.
walking around, and they're still wearing their face protection,
Right.
and they seem
That's right.
weaker. They get weaker and weaker every day.
Of course.
But the incredible irony is that they're wearing those things to protect themselves. What?
Because they believe.
They believe, and they're dying
They
slowly
believe.
because of it.
Yeah. That's just how delusional
Yeah,
they
it's
are.
heartbreaking.
How dystopic they are.
It's hard for me to
okay?
even walk down the street
Because
and
they
see these
don't
people.
even have the proper mindset. Okay, I said you don't have to believe in the so-called fabricated facts from the
Mhm.
mainstream media.
Mhm.
Just simply look back at what Bonnie Henry has said since the initial pandemic.
Well, didn't she say in the beginning that the
Okay,
so-called
she
jab?
says, "Oh yeah, we're sold out. Okay, the local community is all sold out of high quality, medical grade
Yes.
face mask.
Yes.
Quick to protect yourself. Put on a bandana,
Oh,
or
an
even
emergency!
use,
Oh, yeah.
T-shirt
Yes.
covering your mouth will do."
Ha ha ha.
What does that mean? Okay, if you and I are very clear.
What
and,
kind of
our
psychology
mind
is that?
Very clear as a bell that we
Yes.
we still remember what she said back then. She made the announcement.
Yes.
She made public announcements on that. Okay, you can use a bandana to cover.
No.
Come on, bandana is as good as nothing. Okay,
But the point
Might as
here,
well
yeah.
just get a cheesecloth and
Yeah.
cover your face.
But
Okay.
but there's a deeper level, and I totally agree with what you just said. But there's a deeper level. It's a fear psychology method. In other
It
words,
is.
the house is burning down.
That's right.
Now that might not be, but they're
Yeah.
trying to convince you that the house is burning down by saying
right.
that you should throw a wet towel over your head.
That's right.
Okay? Now, you can't escape the house right yet. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you can't go for the door, but until such time as you can go for the door, which is some medical protection procedure, you can throw a wet towel over your head. Now, you know what that's doing? What that's doing is breaking your logical discernment.
That's right.
Your logical discernment would be the question, is the house burning or not?
Correct.
But no, they don't want you to think about that.
They don't want you to think that
No,
way.
they
They
want you to
just want
jump
you
to
to-
the next level, which is this house is burning. Do not question that point, and
That's
put a
right.
wet towel over your head because you're going to
Correct.
survive in the meantime
That's right.
until we have the emergency exits open. Okay?
Yep, that's the point. Yes,
See?
absolutely.
See how this works? And this is the pernicious and seductive nature of propaganda. And it's all
Yes.
based on fear.
Of course.
And it goes
So that's why I still recall what she said that makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, that was what kept me awake
yes.
all these times.
Yes.
Well, the minions were all very inconsistent about their propaganda,
Yes.
but yet they still try to mind control people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the other way were to take a deep breath, step back like 100 steps, and look at the picture from 1,000 feet above ground.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
this. Okay, yes. First off, like I said over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
how many people actually die from that respiratory disease. No different than seasonal flus.
Well, I looked at the
Secondly,
death rate in my province and in
right,
the overall death rate in Canada, and these are
right,
statistics that are published by the government
yeah.
that are not in
So
dispute.
it just
And
so it
it
just
seems
means
to
that this
me,
so-called
with my
Wuhan
eyes,
virus is not that
well,
deadly.
it seems to me with
Okay,
my eyes, and I can read a line chart, that
right,
death rate did go up very
a
slightly,
little bit.
about 5%.
That's right. That's right.
But that could absolutely be explained by the fact that the drug overdose death rate went up exponentially. Like
Could.
I'm talking 100%. It
Oh
doubled.
yeah, oh yeah,
Okay,
oh yeah,
so
oh yeah.
I'm not an expert in statistics,
You
but
know,
if you take if you
I try
take
to keep it simple and
yeah,
try to break that information
yeah,
to people, including my parents. Okay,
exactly.
my dad is. Anyways,
I'd like to
I
explain
don't
a little
want to
bit more
criticize
before we
him no
get into
more.
that.
Out
Yeah,
of respect, I don't want to
yeah,
criticize him
yeah. We
anymore. But I
don't.
always
Yeah,
try to wake up his mind. I said,
yeah.
look, I would be seriously worried,
Mm-hmm.
if not concerned,
Uh huh.
if this so-called Wuhan virus,
Mm-hmm.
including the original strain, I call it alpha strain and the
Whatever.
delta
Yep. Yep.
strain, which is supposedly more deadlier than this Omicron and subsequently 9 wave, 13 wave,
Right.
17 wave,
Right.
testing from the
Right.
sewer
Yeah. How
water,
many
blah blah
waves
blah.
are we on now? It must be in the
Uh,
20s.
they stopped briefly for not making the announcement recently.
Oh,
Okay,
right.
but anyways,
Uh huh.
I
Mm-hmm.
said I would be seriously worried if the actual death toll is about 30%. For example, I
Uh
told
huh.
them, okay, for every 10 average people walking up and down the street,
Mm-hmm.
okay, 3 of them suddenly collapse because of this infection,
That would
where
get
all
that.
the
That would make me
ambulances
think.
lining up on the side of the curbs waiting to pick up these
Yeah.
collapsed people,
Yep.
then that would seriously concerns me.
In other words, the death rate is higher than the ability to pick
But
up the
so I turned
corpses.
around and said, look, Dad, do you actually see
Uh huh.
ambulances lining up and down the streets in Richmond waiting to pick up those who collapsed because of this Wuhan, this coronavirus
Answer
incident?
no.
The answer is no. People still walking up and down. Okay.
Do you see
People still
the
beating
grave?
their leg.
Yeah.
Do you see hospitals all lined up? Do you see the streets all lined up with ambulances
Yeah.
waiting to pick
Yeah.
up those who got infected
Yeah.
and collapsed
And
and
do
died?
you see
No.
people protesting that their children died and asking the government and screaming at them to do something about it? No.
They don't see that. Okay, the Chinese community is tightly controlled by the mainstream media, by their language of media. Okay, Singtao, Mingtao newspaper, Feichao radios, and whatnot.
Well, guess what?
Okay.
The Chinese community is certainly not different than the Western or the Caucasian
True,
community, because
true,
we are
true.
also controlled, and we are all humans. Okay,
That's right,
we're all
that's
humans, and
right.
we're all easily controlled by manipulative propaganda media
That's right.
techniques.
That's right.
And
Because they can't see through that limitations. Okay, a lot of them
yes.
still fixated on it. So when it's easier to control their minds within the community by manipulating the narratives through the media they watch.
I'm not going to get
every single day.
into I'm not going to get into the details of Freudian psychology
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, that's fine. No, we don't
Yeah,
have to. We
but
all know.
it's very, very pertinent in this case, and
Right.
you have to use what's called primal fears
Sure.
and primal urges.
That's right.
The two primal urges and fears, according to Freud, were sex and death.
That's right.
In other words, fear and procreation. In other words, we're reduced to the level
Yep.
of a cockroach.
Sure.
A cockroach cares about two things: reproduction
Mhm.
and getting exterminated.
Getting food. Right. Getting
Now,
exterminated.
the food part is just the means to the end of procreation, and the getting exterminated part is why you have the fight or flight syndrome. In other words,
You bet.
if you're externally threatened, you run and hide.
Right.
You run and
right.
hide in the dark shadows under the table. Okay.
Right.
And if the lights aren't on, then you propagate
Mhm.
because nobody is threatening you. And that's the basics. that they're trying to
Yep.
reduce us to with things like propaganda. It's
That's
always
right.
hitting on those basic points. Do not rationalize. Do not think
That's right.
critically. Do not
Okay.
use statistics. Only believe in those 1,000 scientists who said that they believe in global warming. Well, I'll tell you a little story. Story number two.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to one of my students lately,
Yes.
and I
Yep.
said, and they came to me and they said, 1,000 scientists said that global warming is a man-made reality. Okay, and that was in their science class, not social science
Right.
class.
That's right.
And I said to them, well, did you know anything about Galileo? Do you know anything about this guy named Galileo?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Oh yeah,
Well, they would
we
say,
heard about we heard about Galileo. Yeah."
right.
And what did Galileo believe? He believed that the Earth revolved around the sun,
Right.
but 1,000 priests, bishops, and cardinals disagreed with him, and they
Yep.
said that the all the things in the cosmos revolved around the Earth. That the Earth was the center of the solar system, and not only the solar system, but the entire galaxy. In fact, the entire firmament, the entire cosmos, revolved around the Earth, and that this was the center of the universe.
Right.
But Galileo had evidence to the contrary, because he
Yep.
had used a primitive telescope to find out that there were
That's
things
right.
flying around in the sky that mathematically did not conform to those 1,000 opinions.
That's right.
So that's why we developed something called the scientific method.
Correct.
In other words, we divorced ourselves from opinion.
Yes.
And that's what led to the Renaissance, the scientific revolution, and the entire modern technology and system of, government and democracy and so on planet Earth we have now. We're no longer constrained by a bunch of religious fanatics who are trying to tell us things that are ideological. We now have
Absolutely.
democracy. We now have freedom. We now have thought based on reality
Yeah.
because of
So, yeah.
Galileo, among others. That was one of the precursors, one of the
Yeah, that's
sparks
right.
that started
Yeah.
humanism. So why
So,
do we have some crazy people from the Dark Ages telling us that it's all based on opinion again? It
because
certainly is
we are
not.
being tightly influenced, they really, it's all about power and control. See, okay.
That's
Once the
right.
cabal,
It's a religion.
the 1,000 years old cabal, realize that they're losing control over humanity,
Yes,
they try to firm up their grip once again.
that's a
But they
correct
do it
analysis.
slowly and not gradually
That's
over
correct.
time. Okay, they don't do
Absolutely.
it just overnight like flicking a switch, a light switch. They don't. They didn't.
No.
Okay, they
They
just retake
step
it
by
gradually by
step.
infiltration, brainwashing, indoctrinations,
That's
all those
right.
kind of things.
It's kind of like a drug dealer. A drug
Yep,
dealer gives you a free hit,
yep. But in
a
some ways,
free sample, and they
that's
know that if
right.
they give you invite you to a few parties,
That's
and
right.
give you some
That's
free
right.
drugs a couple of times, that you'll get
Correct.
addicted. You'll get addicted eventually, and then you'll
Yep.
be captured by them. And
That's
then you'll have
right.
to
Hook, line, and
sell.
sinker.
You'll have to sell everything you got and betray your friends and family in order to come up with enough cash to buy your next fix.
That's right.
And that's
So,
their method.
anyways, yeah. So, anyways, back to the subject of the WHO and the cabal and the stupid propaganda.
Please go.
I told my friends, she's awake, but she's, just like
I'm
many of
sorry to
us,
hear. I'm
especially
sorry to hear
living in
about her
this
daughter. And if
nut
your daughter needs help,
nutcase,
yeah,
yeah, living in this nutcase community,
yes,
everybody, of course, the awake and aware
uh-huh,
like us,
hmm,
you and I, and her husband, and so on, and a few others.
yes.
Sometimes we feel this. We feel a little bit depressed. Let's just put it that way. So I cheer her
It's a
up. I
tough
said,
fight.
"Look,
Yep.
the tide is definitely turning." I said, at least from a humanity
Yes.
perspective, people are gradually awake, more so than ever. day after day. I said,
Right.
look, the best prime examples I can give you to cheer you up are, for example, the following. WHO tried to constantly keep us in a scare.
Yes.
They know that in the initial so-called pandemic, the Wuhan virus, and I told her the reason why I absolutely refused to call the name of COVID,
Yes.
because that bears absolutely no resemblance, no relationship to the respiratory
No,
illness.
that's an
The very
obfuscation. Yeah, they're trying to use
the
names and
very
labels.
fact of that name
Yeah.
is a certificate of vaccine or vaccination
Yes,
identity.
and that reveals the
Okay.
fact that it was planned years ago.
It's kind of like you're chanting, just like the Christians go sing songs and hymns and praise for Lord Jesus
Yes,
Christ.
it's a hex. It's a
They
hex.
want you to constantly chant that COVID thing to keep
Yep. Mm-hmm.
your energy low, kind of calling for Satans to show up.
I believe that's true. There's another level, a much higher level in the energy field,
Right.
and when you do chanting, and when you do
Right.
repetition, and when you do all those things, and
Yeah.
there's a whole a school
Yeah,
of
yeah.
information about that. For example,
Yeah.
you could talk about things like subliminal suggestions.
Sure.
Now, this might seem a little bit strange to you, but it's apropos. Remember in 1950s, they used to flash images of hot dogs and hamburgers and milkshakes at the movie theater.
In the movie theater, yes, I've seen
And,
that.
yeah, in those days they had outdoor movie theaters where people
Yeah,
drove in their cars and
That's
enjoyed seeing these outdoor movies. And of course, they were very seductive because then you could
That's right.
invite your girlfriend and you can make out with her
That's right.
in the
I've
front
seen-
in the front seat or the
That's
back
why
seat.
the American six-cylinders and V8s
Yeah.
back seat are so so attractive.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to make a personal confession here. I actually, in the 70s,
Right.
did go to an outdoor movie theater and did make out in the backseat of
course, hey.
my
That's
19.
part of the North American culture.
That's right.
okay?
In my
Been
1960s.
there,
Yeah.
done that, and I can tell you,
Yeah.
okay.
And the 19. Hey,
And I'm
you're
not
intro-
ashamed of.
Go for
and
it,
I'm
go
not
for it.
ashamed of reviewing that to you.
Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
made out. I made out in a Suzuki back seat.
Now, I don't know how the hell you did that because there's not much room back there.
Asians are smaller.
Okay.
in size.
Well, you're not that
Okay,
small.
let's just say that.
Yeah.
Okay,
But the
say
point
no.
is I made out in the back seat of a 1967 Plymouth Fury 3,
Right.
and believe me, there's a lot of room back there.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So anyway,
But anyways, okay. Well,
so the
let's
point
move on.
is,
So,
the point is that it became illegal. It was against the law to flash subliminal suggestion. Like they take the movie frames and they put like a little
and
microsecond
split like
picture
right.
of the hamburger or
Wait.
the hot dog or whatever, and that was
I know.
done
I've
to
seen,
increase.
I've seen that before.
It was
I knew that.
it was done to increase
Hot
sales
dog sales.
of those things. Now that's illegal
Yeah.
technically. So
Back to the subject, I said, hey,
Yeah.
look, if the cabal is winning,
Uh-huh.
they would gradually roast us slowly,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a pot of water while cooking the frog.
absolutely.
Okay, why suddenly they have to make these frequent announcements? Okay, I said, haven't you noticed that about 3 months ago they suddenly says there's the money box
Yes.
and the polio
Yes.
outbreak. Quick, go get more jabs,
Yes.
and then later on, about I would say 2.5 weeks ago, they tried their new latest tricks by saying certain countries in Africa there's an Ebola outbreak, blah blah blah, and now suddenly I think it was 3
Yes.
days ago they made the announcement that there are deadly fungus going on. Quick,
Nate,
okay.
you are making a fantastic observation here.
Yes,
Because
of
for
course.
thousands or hundreds of years at least, they've been manipulating us like
right.
like marionette puppets,
That's right.
using
That's right.
these kinds of manipulation techniques,
That's right.
from subliminal suggestion to fear manipulation.
That's
to
right.
scarcity, induction, inducing you to do certain things because you don't have enough food,
That's
or
right.
or direct violence.
Yes.
That's called war.
That's
Okay,
right.
and all of these
That's right.
techniques, in order to maintain control, have
Yes.
suddenly broken down.
But I told
Suddenly broken down.
I told her, I said, look, the narratives are failing. They know that they can no longer keep us sheeps well under control and
Right.
hypnotized.
Right.
That's why suddenly they become very desperate. They know the old narrative starts to fail
Yep.
because we got sick and tired
Yep.
of it.
So
You
what's
know,
what's
deep
their
down
response?
inside. So
Their
they try
response
to
is,
throw
yeah.
throw in the hammer, throw in the wrench, throw in new ones, and to raise the scare once again. But guess what?
Yes.
Didn't work out. Okay,
Yeah,
the
sorry.
money box thing is all bullshit. Yes, some people fell for it, but not a whole lot.
It didn't
much.
work. Monkeypox
Didn't
failed.
work over time. In a
Sorry.
short while, completely petered out, and
Yep.
then they tried to throw in the polio scare.
Yep.
Same observation, same
Uh-huh.
outcome. So then they turn around and throw in the Ebola about.
Oh,
3
that was a
weeks
good
ago.
one. That was a good one.
Okay,
Yep.
but guess what? Nobody believes it. Nobody following the narratives. No more.
I
So
absolutely died laughing when they changed monkeypox to some other clinical name just
That's right.
because they were trying to
That's
keep
right.
that one going.
They just tried to go through their dictionaries, their pools
Mm-hmm.
of listed deadly viruses
Yes.
and parasites and whatnot, and throw it out into the public to try to keep us in the scare.
Well,
That's why the most recent one they throw in and say, "Oh, there are deadly funguses going on."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Look," I told her, I said, "Fear no more.
That's right.
If there's so many deadly viruses and
There would be
parasites
bodies in
and
the street.
Ebolas and whatever going on, okay, we don't have to wait for their public announcement. We'll be dead by now, okay?
Now
If they're out there surrounding us.
Yeah.
So, conversely speaking,
Yes.
if there's nothing that scary just happened overnight, suddenly becomes an important, subject matter that has to concern WO, then what gives, right?
Now,
I said, ultimately, it's
Yeah.
just a scare because they want to keep
Absolutely.
us in the scare.
Now,
And
if you have
people have-
yeah, if you have,
And I told her, you don't have to be afraid no more, because it seems like if the situation keeps going on, it just means that this so-called deadly fungi narrative's gonna peter out again, and they'll try to come out something more dramatic to keep us in the scare.
Okay.
And over and over again. Why? Because they know that they're no longer able to keep us or the situation well under their control like before.
okay,
We are waking up. If we're not waking up, we are scared.
Absolutely
so that they
right.
don't have to keep on throwing money blocks and polio and then Ebola and new deadly fungus
Correct.
or whatever every couple of weeks or a couple of months.
well, now you're getting
So that's how
to
I
the
flip
truth.
back and forth, and she digs, right?
You're
I
getting
understand.
the truth, but I want to tell you
Sure.
about two things. First of
Yes,
all,
please.
human beings cannot switch gears easily.
Mhm.
They cannot change their minds easily, and the reason for that is because we are emotional.
That's right.
Now, certain people are logical and are able
Right.
to find out a new logical fact and
That's right.
completely change their lifestyle, their way of life, the way they raise their children, even the food they eat, just because they have a new fact and that they're intellectual enough to realize that that fact is true and that everything before that was a lie.
That's
Now, the
right.
number of people who are able to do that are very small.
Yes.
Most people cannot transition from what they're
True.
used to thinking and what they're used to
Yes.
doing into a new world
Right.
because facts don't matter. What
Facts don't
matters
matter.
is psychology, their feelings,
That's right.
their
That's
their
right.
ability to absorb the reality and the way of life that is necessitated by the facts.
Correct.
Okay, so there's a slow motion train going on here. But once you get that slow motion train on the tracks,
That's right.
then it's not stoppable.
There's no stopping afterwards.
There's no
Yes,
stopping
it.
it.
Just keeps
Now,
on moving.
Now in physics,
Okay.
we call this inertia.
That's right.
When you have an entire population that believes a certain idea or propaganda, I would say,
Yes.
then there's an inertia there, and you
right.
you cannot combat that inertia with an equal or opposite inertia
Correct.
without using extreme methods.
Correct.
I'm talking about violence, war,
That's right.
apocalypse, etc. Now, you don't want to do that. because that causes extreme destruction. Because you have in physics, you have the combined force of the preceding object with the other object, and that would cause a collision, which would be like driving off the highway into a head-on.
That's right.
Okay. Now we don't want that because that's destructive. What we want is to gradually turn the human consciousness away from one road onto another, and use that inertia. Just in Aikido, the martial art Aikido, where you don't take the enemy's attack and directly confront it. What you do is you use the enemy's energy and you redirect it. You redirect it away from you into something constructive and helpful and hopeful.
Sure.
You know, and that's what the challenge is. That's what the challenge is in the world today.
Right.
I'm not talking about you and me. I'm talking about the world today.
That's right. That's right. But I'm trying to give her some telltale signs to show her that there's hope in humanity, because
there is.
People are, even to say the least, people are ignoring these narratives now. Okay, not falling for it.
Oh, the redirection is happening. The push to one side is beginning.
That's right. That's right. Of course, they will always try to intimidate us, scare us into submission, or even, try to show those doctored sceneries where people lining up for the booster bivalent shots and so on and so forth, just like what the CDC did shortly after WHO made the announcements about monkeypox, and TTAM suddenly made a big fuss out of monkeypox explosion in Quebec and Ontario and so on, right? They immediately, CBC followed the marching orders by immediately took doctored, sceneries of sudden erection of neighborhood clinics for jabbing the money box, and there are people lining up, and afterwards they would be interviewed by the news reporters saying that, I'm scared, thank goodness they offered this jab, blah, blah, blah. It's all bullshit, okay? It's all doctored. It's all made.
Back to what we were saying earlier.
Try to lure you and condition you into believing that this is indeed the case.
Back to what we were talking about earlier. If they just ignore the fact of whether their premise is correct or not. The premise is we're all going to die. We have to take this shot, right? But they just ignore that part and just go right to the scarcity. Oh, we have a limited number of shots and we have a limited number of time to give it to you, so therefore you have to panic and fight each other to get what you don't need. In fact, what they're doing is they're creating a condition where you're going to panic and fight and beg and plead for your poison.
That's right.
For your poison.
Right. That's right.
Now, that reminds me, give me a second, Nate. That reminds me of the exact end of Nazi Germany, World War II.
Yes.
The government found itself assailed on two fronts.
Yes.
The Americans from the west, the Russians from the east. And they were under such incredible pressure that what do they do? They doubled down on the oppression of their own people. You have to join the Volkssturm. You have to join the Citizens' Army. You have to, even people in their 60s and kids in their early teens have to grab weapons and fight. And you know why they're doing that? Why they're doing that? To defend the dictatorial leaders.
That's right.
Okay, and you know what you're going to do? If you don't obey, we're going to execute you and hang you from the nearest light standard. We're going to hang you from the nearest railway crossing, and we're going to use maximum terror and force against anybody who's under our control still. And that's exactly what you can see in this so-called pandemic. And I want to talk a little bit more. What the WEF is a pandemic. And we've touched on this earlier in our talk. Have you heard of the Black Death?
Yes.
During the Middle Ages?
Yes.
Well, there were two. There was one in the Roman times, and there was one in more recent times in Britain and in Europe in the 1660s. Now, the Roman one was really bad, but we're not going to get into that. The 1660s one is very well documented. Okay,
Correct.
and it went
Yeah.
throughout Europe, and it was definitely fleas from rats, and
That's right.
due to the unbelievable, unhygienic sewer systems in those days. And in those days, you didn't have a sewer system. You know what you had? You had a village that had a streets with a down angle leading
That's
to the
right.
nearest river. So
That's
what you
right.
did is you threw your shit out
Yeah.
of the upstairs or downstairs windows of your home
Yeah.
into a street which was shaped like a chevron, a V,
That's right.
a V
Yeah.
shape, and in the middle there would be a river of pestilence
Right.
going right down into the river. So all villagers were on the riverbank, and all the
That's
shit
right.
just went down. So it was an open
That's
sewer.
right. That's right.
Okay, smelled like hell,
Of
but it
course.
worked, I guess, until a certain biological disease was instituted. And that was the Black Death in the Middle Ages. Now, it killed 30% of the population.
Yeah.
That's an endemic.
Yeah.
Maybe some people say in some countries it was 50%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do we have that here? No.
No.
Do we have that now? No.
No.
Is there any connection between what happened in those times and what's happening now?
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. In what way?
It's called, in
Control.
Freudian and Jungian terms, collective
Right.
consciousness.
All right.
We have a collective conscious memory of real pandemics as a race, in our archetypical subconscious, which has to do with things like, shall I say, past life experiences. But I'm not even going to get into that because that's a religious subject.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
the point
Yeah.
of psychological, genetic memory,
Yeah.
we do remember real pandemics.
Yes.
And if anybody wants to trigger those memories, which are deeply buried within our subconscious, then
Yeah.
they can try to make a fake pandemic,
Of course.
which doesn't have any connection whatsoever to
Of
reality.
course.
And that will make us believe that it's happening again.
Correct.